great pleasure to be given the opportunity as a young Samoan female. We rarely get this opportunity to share with others our lives, the lives that we've led as young people serving God. I'm actually 37 years old, so not too young, not too old, somewhere in the middle. My name is Galumalemana Bolivia Smith. I will touch later on the Galumalemana bit in my story. I was born and raised in Samoa to my wonderful parents, Reverend Dr. Lalagaina Frank and Sulimatai Smith. For those of you who, some of you may know my father. He is actually the Dean for Polynesia at St. John's Theological College in Auckland. So they live in New Zealand, and me and my brother, my older brother, and my sister and her 2 children live here in Samoa. I've titled this presentation today, Lalagaina o Malanga. And as you can see in the photo, it's weaving my journey as a young person in the Pacific. My journey is not a comfortable journey, not a journey that a lot of people will agree with, but it is my journey, and I believe it is for me to share. I may cry a bit, please bear with me in some of my stories, because I've come across I've gone through a lot in the little time that I've actually been a youth leader. So we'll get things started. I hope everyone can hear me. If you can, just do a thumbs up on your screen. And if I go too fast, please, I have a tendency to really talk real quickly. So if I go too quickly, please just wave or something to let me know that I'm going too fast. Yep, so I've also drawn my presentation from Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Again, I've already introduced myself. I'm a team leader for the Communications and Information Technology Division at Samoa Water Authority. For those of you who don't know, that is a government entity, and we actually provide the water supply for the whole of Samoa. So we do 98% coverage for Samoa, or at least that's what we tell people. I am currently worshiping at All Saints Anglican Lay Fifi in Samoa, and this is also where a lot of my life and a lot of grooming for my journey started. My formative years up to leaving school. So this is where I grew up. What were the cultural influences in relation to the Bible? Were there family influences that nurtured me in the Bible? And were there any battles across the church being waged in terms of the Bible?
Bolivia, do you want to be sharing your screen at this point?
I knew I was missing something. All right. Okay, let's see. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah, that's great. Perfect.
Okay. So, So I grew up in Samoa, where religion is an integral part of our lives. It's an integral part of one's upbringing here in Samoa, is to go to church every Sunday, even though when we were young, we didn't really understand. We just thought, go to church and things like that. But my mother's parents served as pastors in the village of Saleaula. If you ever get a chance to come to Samoa, go and visit the lava fields in Saleaula. Sava'i has strong Christian values, and you will see it most, like today, you won't see it in the urban areas in Apia, but if you go out into the rural areas in Sava'i, they're very much strong in the religion and the Christianity, where they still every morning they wake up and do their food and go to church in their white clothes. So like every other Samoan family, we had a tradition of lotu afiafi, which is actually evening prayers that my mom would lead. And we sing a hymn and recite psalms, and we also say prayers. So we were instilled these religious values at a very young age. So when you're born, this is the culture that you live in and the tradition that you live in. Even when I grew up, it wasn't as important in schools. We didn't have any religion education in schools, except for the recital of the Lord's Prayer, and that was about it. I used to enjoy going to church on Sundays, and sorry, let me just find my notes. I think I'm going off topic. On Sunday mornings, you'd see it, everyone driving by, and you'd see everyone in their white attire walking to church. And our parents would always make sure that we would go to church on Sundays. We would never miss a Sunday unless, even when we were sick. And most of the Samoans here would know that even if you're sick, they'll still drag you to church. I used to look forward. I grew up in the Sunday school at All Saints Anglican Church, and we had the pioneers. We had teachers who were teaching us in Sunday school, which were also role models in my growing up as a youth leader. We had the likes of Galumalemana Bolivia Smith and also Mrs. Donjo Fikuleai, who nurtured us in Sunday school and taught us what we knew in the Bible. A lot of the things that we learned in Sunday school, as a young person, we didn't really, I went to Sunday school because I wanted to do coloring and I wanted to see all my friends. As I grew up and I was told that that's not exactly why you're there in Sunday school and that you actually have to learn something. And this is proven in every October, we have a White Sunday, Loto Tamaiti, and that's when you see your mothers at the back with their sticks looking up at you and trying to, if you miss your verse or mess up your verse, they're holding the stick up like this, you know, because that is the accumulation of what you've learned throughout the whole year. And usually if you've done well, you'll get treated to a nice meal. If you don't, you'll get a hiding or something. Yeah, that's the Samoans. That was me in the when I was growing up. As we moved to New Zealand in 1999, and we went to a small church called St. Thomas in East Tamaki. And this church was a culture shock for us because we came from a church that had vibrant people, young people in the church. St. Thomas had no young people. Me and my sister were the only young people in that church. And you would see couples, you know, the old men trying to, you know, lead the old women, their wives along. They're like 70 years old. And it was really hard for us, me and my sister, growing up in that church. We didn't have anybody to talk to. And make it worse, when the preacher used to preach back then, Reverend David Steele, me and my sister would play games, and of course we'd get a beating from my mom. But we had all these old people, and it was really different for us. And that was, I think, we had learned by heart the liturgy, 404 liturgy from the All Saints Anglican Church growing up. When we moved to St. Thomas Church, we were like, you know, it was like a race for me and my sister to finish the responses to the priest, because it was so slow, and all the old women and old ladies were like, grace and peace to you. And it was really hard for us. And we were like, no, you got to go, you know, but that was us. And it was really different for us. Along the lines, the Samoans in Auckland got their act together and decided to gather as a church and became the Ecclesia Anglicana Mangri. So that was also different for us, because then we came across young people who were born and raised in New Zealand and had no idea how to speak Samoan, and yet our whole service was in Samoan. So I guess for us, me and my sister growing up, was we were exposed to all these different culture shocks at a very young age. And because at that time we were the Whaiwheau's children, we were also given a lot of responsibilities. We were the ones that would serve. We were the ones that would lock up the church, open the church, things like that. So obviously they gave me the leadership role as a youth leader for the young people in that Samoan church. And I guess from there, that was when I started to become a youth leader. And I was only 13 years old. 13 years old, I was scared. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was going on the fact that, you know, you fake it till you make it, that slang that people like to do. That was how I was leading at that time. And because I was a Whaiwheau's child, everyone sort of just listened to me anyways. And because I like to talk, they listened anyways. And I guess that was what happened to, that was where I started. Yes, I started out faking it till I made it, but along the lines, I learned huge lessons. I became the youth coordinator for the Diocese of Polynesia in New Zealand in 2003, and I was only 16 years old. And that was only that you were only allowed to vote. I was only allowed to vote at 16 for anything. And it was really hard because I had been a youth leader for 3 years prior to that, and not being able to do anything. And yet you were given this responsibility to lead, but you can't make any decisions within the church anyways. And it's fitting that I mentioned this because I was hoping some of our young people would join, because our youth president right now, we elected her as president, she was only 14. And the struggles that, you know, that we face would be the same as her now. But anyhow, one of the Bible verses that I used to always think about was in Timothy, was from the book of Timothy. Don't let anyone look down on your youth. That was, I didn't know what it meant at that time. I just liked that it said, don't let anyone look down on your youth. And I thought, yeah, that's the Bible is saying, don't look down on me because I'm young. I can do whatever I want because the Bible tells me. Let me move to my next slide. So this is a slide of my family. This is, I guess, the backbone of anything that I do, my parents, and that's all the grandchildren, that's all of us. Yeah. When I was younger, I was also a part of the Brownies and the Girl Guides. This is similar to the Girl Scouts in New Zealand. And this was also one of the things that we wanted to carry on when we came to New Zealand, but unfortunately, they only had Girl Scouts, and it was different from what was taught in Samoa. I guess for me, a lot of my leadership skills came from Brownies and Girl Guides. They instilled in us a lot of leadership values and teamwork and things that I later learned down the line that I needed. And I really wish that a lot of people, that we still had this, but unfortunately we don't have the people to do this. So the church Christian tradition in which I was brought up were joined. This is the church that formed me. What was the tradition? What importance was the Bible given in that tradition? Who were the important people in the church during those years in my life? And whether the church resisted or became defensive about any other expression of Christianity. So as you can see, this is the amount of people that were in our youth group back in New Zealand compared to this slide. That is the amount of young people in Samoa. So you can see the difference, the difference from coming from leading from a small group of people and moving to Samoa, and these were the people, you know, that you were asked to lead. And it was a bigger group of people, and it was really hard at the first, but it was good. God never gives you challenges that you can't overcome. So yeah.
Oh.
So when I moved to Samoa in 2006, this is what I moved back to. Young, vibrant young people who were ever ready to serve God, ever ready to hear the calling of God. And it was back to traditional liturgy for us in the English, although it's a church in Samoa, but we did everything in English, which was, you know, oddly funny enough, because I was in New Zealand and they did it in Samoan. And then I come to Samoa and they do it in English. So it's like a reverse cultural thing for us. So Bible studies, this was where we learned, we did a lot of Bible studies around the table discussions. And I think among these group of people that are on your screen at the moment, among these people were people that, you know, came together, and we talked about different platforms of how to present the word of God to young people and how to keep the word of God alive. A lot of the times we are stuck in our traditional liturgy, following the liturgy. And for me personally, I am fine with that. I love the liturgy because I later learned that a lot of the liturgy is based off the scriptures. But as young people, we are impatient. We are impatient to go through the liturgy, understand what it actually means. And I'm now 37, and I think I only found out when I was 30 or something. After, you know, 30 years of living in the Anglican church and following the tradition, I only learned that the liturgy was based off the scriptures from the Bible. And this is what we are trying to encourage our young people now, is because we're always trying to look for other ways, other platforms to worship God, but without really understanding that the liturgy that is given to us and that is readily available for us is actually based off the scriptures. And so, but, you know, a lot of discussion went into it. We did a lot of fun things, you know, we did trivias, we did Bible studies, like off the hook things, you know, that young people will like. But for me anyways, I still go back to the liturgy. And I guess that was one of the reasons why I actually, you know, became a lay minister. That I became a lay minister because I felt that the liturgy had so much to offer our people, but we are not, we are underutilizing it. And there is so much depth in it where I believe our church, our young people can feed off, you know, and receive the word of God without having to, I'm sorry if anyone like thinks that I'm saying, don't go off or anywhere. That is your prerogative, that's your freedom, that's your truth. But for me anyways, I feel that, you know, and that was one of the reasons why I had actually gone and decided that lay minister was a way to go for me, because I felt that as an instrument for the liturgy that is there is so much that we can offer our young people, our church, even our old church, you know. Sometimes it's just reciting, but when you actually think about what you're reciting or what you're saying, then you actually understand the concept or the theology behind the liturgy. So that's I hope I make sense there. There's definitely been a lot of you know, people stepping forward, people exploring outside of the church for platforms that are made available in other denominations, but we still serve the same God. And at the end of the day, our calling is to bring people to God. So regardless of where we serve or what we do as servants, we are still doing the work of God. And we are still called by God. And, the work never finishes. So I really hope that, we keep encouraging each other to do this. As I mentioned, my life wasn't always, easygoing. And I'm not always the bubbly person that I am. I've had my lows, and I remember my father had to send me an email one time, and I think this was in 2013. I was living in Samoa, and a lot of the Samoans on here know this, or know this about me anyways. I was going through a rough time and my dad plainly said, you've been given a second chance. It's up to you to pull up your socks, do something, make a difference in your life. So even though I was a youth leader and I believed in God, I still did a lot of mistakes, and mistakes that, like my father said, can either land you in jail or create a better future for you, or move on and use your life for something better. And I'm a living testimony of that, because it is true. There was a point in my life that I could have been sitting in jail in a cell, and not even my life would have been wasted. And all that work that my parents had put into me, all the previous, my Sunday school teachers, youth leaders that I had worked with, all the work that we've done together would have gone to waste. And that was a wake-up call for me. When I went, and this was in 2013, when my father said, you better pull up your socks, or otherwise you're going to be sitting in a cell in jail, and everyone else that's, that you think are your friends will be laughing at you, and you will have no more friends in your life. So the friends that you are now going around with and hanging around with right now, they're not going to come and see you when you're sitting in that cell. So, but, did I listen? I listened for a little bit, and that was because I was very young. And I thought, okay, yeah, my father has a point. I don't want to be in jail. I don't want, I'm going to be the laughing stock of. In 2016, I was bestowed the chiefly title for my mom's family, which is where Galumalemana comes from. When the ceremony was done, the Fefe'au, so the priest, prayed over us, and he said, which basically meant, in English, that God's, how do you say this? Does anyone know how to say it in English? My Samoan people. So, which basically meant that to me anyways, God's presence has been bestowed upon you. And as a chiefly, as a chief, this is God's wisdom, God's knowledge has been put upon you, and therefore you need to lead your family to you need to take care of your family, your village, your church, things like that. So I was no longer living for myself, but I was living for my family, for the church, for my village. And a lot of theology behind this is that I really enjoy, is that you're no longer yourself. And as Jesus said, lay everything, come as you are. And I guess for me, that was the time that I thought to myself, I'm now into this stage and I need to grow up. And if I don't change, everyone's still going to hate me. Everyone's still going to look at me and think, what a waste, she could have been something. She could have done something, but no, she chose that life. So yeah, that was the turning point in my life, was being bestowed that title and having to live long and like actually sit down and think about it as to why I actually, got that title. And a lot of people don't know my story. A lot of people just think, oh, wow, she's so successful. She's doing so well. But no, there's a lot of people that actually know a lot of things about me and, and still have been supportive and helped me in my journey as a young person. I think one of the other, and at that time we were hardly going to church. I was hardly going to church. I was only going on special occasions like Christmas, Christmas Eve services and New Year's Eve, Monday, Thursday, things like that. Those were the only, but funny enough, I went to one of the services, I think it was 2018, and Archbishop Don was preaching. And Archbishop Don said, the message, and I always thought, I said, I didn't want to go to church because people hated me at church. People were talking about me behind my back. And I would used to think, oh, I've done so much, for the church, and yet they still ridicule me, like just one mistake and things like that. That's what was going on in my mind back then. But I went to church that day, and Archbishop Don said, I don't have to like you, but I have to love you because it's what God commands us to do. You must love your neighbor as you love yourself. You must love one another. So, and I thought about it, I said, okay, I don't have to like these people that I'm going to church with, but I still have to love them. And I came home, and I think I shared this with my sister, and I said, hey, let's start going back to church more often. We need to do something, change, do something in the church and start being committed to God and the life that we were always destined to, called to do. And she said, well, I was like, well, I know we hate a lot of people, like, that's what we were thinking. We don't like a lot of people, but, Archbishop Don preached today, and the word said, you don't have to like them, but you have to love them. So let's not worry about them. Let's still go, because we're only going to church for one reason, and we're going to church for God. We're not going to church for anyone else. So yeah, I think that was 2018, 2019. I went to Tonga. For the youth Raukura. And I remember there was a lot of flack, for me going to Tonga at that time. But through the grace of God, I was able to still go and experience Raukura with other young people. And from there, it reignited my passion for young people. And I felt that there was so much work that we needed to do, but we've given up, and that I've given up, and that, God still hasn't finished with my life, and God still has a plan for me. So that same year, I think I also went to AWSC, and I met a lot of, beautiful young women, met Reverend Val there. So she was funny. So I sat next to her on my first, and we were having a service. Again, it's a culture shock for me, even after living in New Zealand. I sat next to Reverend Val on that first Sunday, on that first service that we had to open AWSC. And I was thinking, who is this Palangi woman sitting next to me in her shorts, in her shorts and her shirt, but she had a collar. And I was like, and us in the islands, we don't have priests. Our priests have to be like formal and things like that. And I said, what kind of priest is this? Like, she's wearing like shorts in church and things like that. Man, so fun. And but later on, I got to interact with Reverend Val, and we had a very good conversation. So we had a very good talanoa with Reverend Val, and I understand, learning to accept that the diversity of the Anglican Church and the diversity of our three tikanga church. that we don't all have to, be one for that. And I think that's the beauty of our church, is that we're as diverse as they come. Yeah, I think that's so. So AWSC, that was my introduction into AWSC. And I think Reverend Sonia jumped the gun at that point and said, she's going to be a lay minister in 2 years' time. Yeah, but I had, at that time, as I said, I was just going back to church, and I was, trying to refine myself in the church and where I stand. One of the other things that I really wanted to touch on was when I went to Tanzania. Tanzania was a beautiful place. We traveled for 2 to 3 days, I think, just to get to Tanzania. And I met a lot of beautiful people. And it's totally different from us. Nothing I've ever seen before. And I was really shocked with, they don't follow a liturgy like we do. They're more charismatic in the way that they just come together and worship. And it was also in Tanzania where I really found, the offertory that we do, like your 10% or tithing and things like that. Tanzania, we were sitting in church one Sunday, and it was time for offertory, and people started bringing in chickens and cows and things like vegetables and fruits and things like that. People were bringing that, and I was like, what are they doing? And we had says, what are they doing? And they're like, oh, we don't give money because we don't have money, so we give the 10% of our products, like the growth, like things that we grow with our hands, and whatever we grow, we give 10% of that to God's work. And I said, so does the priest keep it or something? And they say no. So at the end, then the priest will distribute it to other families that need it. So I was like, and for me, I was like, and this is one of the things that I see a lot of my friends struggle with here in Samoa, where when it comes to offertory and tithing and things like that, they go out of their way to look for the money to give. And whereas when I was in Tanzania, I was so blessed to see these people, and I thought, how can I guess this is what it really means for when God says, when we give to God, that if you give with a clean heart and give him what you have, you don't necessarily have to go broke trying to give, and necessarily have to go out of your way to find money to give, things like that. You can actually give. I don't know how it is here in Samoa, where I've never tried it, but maybe I should, where I could try giving, grow something and give that to church as offertory, as an offering. I don't know how I would be perceived, or how they would, how I would be seen by the church, but that would definitely be something interesting. The music definitely was out of this place in Tanzania. They didn't have instruments and things like that. They were just using like little tins and sticks and things like that. So if you see the photo on your right, on the right top corner, that's Pastor Ephraim, and that's his wife. And so when we were there, he had twins, like the wife gave birth to twins. And so one of the twins is actually named after me. So she's actually named after me, and and the other twin is named after Reverend Kireopa, Robert Kireopa's daughter, Chelsea. So the twins there is Chelsea and Bolivia. So I recently received a photo of them. They're all grown up now, and they're doing very well, and they're really beautiful young girls. So I really miss, I think part of the plan was that we would go back to Tanzania and do mission work, but I guess God's plans, different. And we didn't end up going back. I think only one girl, I think Miriam Plume, went back and served as a missionary, but the rest of us didn't go back. But that was one of the experiences that that I will hold, in my life, and it's now, and it's something that I really think about more often now, especially with our choir and things like that. The singing and how people are so, they just hear a beat and they move the way they move and the way God moves in them through music. And that is one of the things that we are trying, we're encouraging our young people here in Samoa they have talents, they play instruments, things like that. We encourage them to come and play instruments in God's temple. But yep, and those are, hi Sophie, I see, so yeah, you see Sophie up there. I met Sophie at Raukura in Tonga, and I think the photo up on the far left is with Reverend Hironika. I think he's Archdeacon now, I'm not sure. But this was back in 2004, 2005 or something like that. 2009, yeah. And then, yeah. And with Reverend Tessa. I think I went, yeah. So just some photos, and then I'll go to so this was AWSC in Tonga, where we had Eleni speak, and also in Enoka, I think it's Enoka. So this is, so I mentioned that I work as an IT professional at Samoa Water Authority. This is actually my team, and we don't have a lot of girls. And actually half of these girls, I think only two of them are actually IT professionals. The other girls are they actually work as the call center representatives for the Samoa Water Authority, which is in my team as well. Part of the projects that we are doing and leading at the moment is we're doing smart meters. So people, we can turn people's water off from the office. Some interesting things that we're doing at the Samoa Water Authority. So the same thing, a lot of the leadership styles that I have in church, I also try and mirror at work. And I think that's some of our group are actually priests and in their own churches, and we do, yeah. So it's really good sharing with them on the perspectives on their churches and things like that. So this is our choir, our music ministry at church. As you can see, we've got like some people here, like some of the young people here who play instruments, and we try and utilize their talents, by playing songs during our services, and we try and encourage them to keep going, because as I said before, young people are very impatient and they lose interest quickly. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to ensure that our young people stay within the church. Sorry. And we hope that, we can continue to help our young people in God's calling. Okay, so where am I now? Yeah, I am, yeah. So I did, like I said, done lay minister at church, and trying my best to, serve God in what He has called me to do. I've actually been through a lot of different contexts in the ministry, and I believe that that has shaped me to be the person that I am today. I don't dwell too much on the past, and I don't share a lot of my story from the past because we're only humans, and as humans, we only listen out for the for the past stories and, you know, the mistakes that we've made, and forget that there's a whole new future that God has called us to. There's a whole world out there that needs to be explored. And so I think, where am I now? Looking back, as a child, as a really young person, it was mainly routine. As a teenager, it's kind of obligation. I had to do it. As a young adult, it was irrelevant to my lifestyle and I didn't need it. But now as an adult, I now understand that it is a choice that God has given me. And I am glad I grew up in the circumstances that I grew up in, and the paths that I have taken, because it only, it led me to find God in my own way. And although it was slow, but thank God I made it to the end. Like, I mean, I haven't really made it to the end, but you know, the work of God still goes. But hopefully, you know, we'll be there soon. I think, yeah, just one last thing was, what did I say? Was faithfulness. I think my faithfulness to God's calling. Like I said, I never really understood the theology that surrounded my life and the traditions, the religion, but we are still in the Easter period, and that I thank God that, you know, God was in the midst of all my chaos, because he suffered with me, and I thank God, you know, he was with me all the way, because I don't know where I would actually be if he wasn't with me.
Yes.
So, you know, yeah, there's a whole lot of that I would like to share, but unfortunately, I think my time is up. But so sorry if it didn't make sense, but you can always message me and I can just send you what I have. I kind of just sort of skimmed and skipped some parts because I realized I was going over time. Sorry, Carrie Edwin. Thank you.
Bolivia, I don't want to stop you, because it's the way you've articulated your life story has been so honest and so moving and so insightful. And I think we're all really privileged to hear your story. So thank you so much for sharing that. Do you want to just unshare your screen now? Stop sharing your screen, and then we can all see each other. And I'm actually also going to stop the recording.